Hello, I'm Chris Osmond, and this is Solutions. Enough complaining, let's fix America. Today I question, why should we follow leaders who only follow? Because if we are only following those leaders who only react when we protest and go to the street, then until that point, the leaders are following the will of the minority. Until the majority speaks up and gets in their face, they only follow the lead of a minority. And right now, the minority with the biggest voice in America are the wealthy. So until Americans stand up, our leadership is only following the lead of the wealthy. That is not what a leader is supposed to be about. A leader of a nation is supposed to lead the majority of that nation, not the minority of that nation, and not to do the bidding of the minority of that nation. They can have their say just like everybody else. But what a leader should do is cause things that are beneficial to the majority of that nation. Some of the qualities, of course, have to be charisma, but charisma is not the only thing that we should look at when we are determining whether a leader is good or not. Because looking at a leader's personality as a qualifier is like trying to determine which one of your neighbors is a serial killer. You always see these stories about how people talk about, oh, he was a really nice neighbor. He was really quiet. He did everything that you're supposed to do in society. Meanwhile, the guy or the woman was killing people willy-nilly behind their backs. So when you have a president who says that his idol is Jesus Christ, like Bush, and people say they would like to have a beer with Bush, well, look what Bush did. He took us into an illegal, immoral war in Iraq. So we judged him based on him being a nice person and speaking nicely. But that does not mean he was a good person. He obviously took us into a war based on lies. And to me, that's one of the biggest war crimes you can commit on the planet. Unless aliens come down here and attack us, what's a bigger war crime than to go take your people into a war that was unjustified, immoral, and illegal? So charisma is important, but it should not be the only thing that we base our decision as far as our leaders are concerned. Some of the things that we should require in a leader is that they should be inspirational. They should either innovate, meaning come up with ideas that help the majority of the people that they are claiming to lead, or they should inspire others to innovate, or they should be surrounded by innovative people. So if you have leaders who don't come up with new ideas, you end up with stagnation. You end up with things that should no longer be. Like take the electoral college. There was a point where the electoral college was necessary because travel to do all the voting was impossible at a time. So we elected people to go in our stead to vote for the things that we wanted them to vote for, or in favor of the things that we wanted them to vote in favor of. But the Electoral College is now antiquated, and it should be revised and should be gotten rid of. And there should be leaders that are pushing to get rid of that, because in the last couple decades, the person who won the popular vote did not win the election because of the Electoral College. Now, there's a problem with that because the Electoral College is a minority of people that are getting to decide to make the decision for the majority of people, and that's not democracy. So that's one of the qualities: inspirational leadership that leads to innovation. Another quality should be they should be social leaders. They should, look towards the needs of the people as far as a society. People oftentimes give Obama credit for being ahead on gay rights. But I do remember a story where he got pissed off at Joe Biden for saying that the administration was in favor of gay rights prior to when he wanted to expose that. And as far as Hillary Clinton, she didn't come around to gay rights till 2013, which seems very late in the game, in my opinion. Other people might not agree with that, but that just seems very late in the game to be coming around to saying that gay people should have the same rights as everybody else. When, to me, that's just human rights. It doesn't matter what your sexual orientation is. You should have the same. Everybody should have the same rights as everyone else. Because when you start denying this group, you can deny that group, and that's how our founders were okay with slavery. They basically had to dehumanize black people to say that to put in a Declaration of Independence that all men are created equal. You can't have slavery because black people, unless you make those black people less than human. The next thing is a leader should also be a leader in economic situations. Right now we have capitalism, and all our leaders continue to go around screaming that we are capitalists, or they were when they were out in public. Nancy Pelosi's been recorded saying we're capitalists in response to people talking about the inequality in America. Dianne Feinstein says we're capitalists. Hillary Clinton says we're capitalists. Now, with the pandemic showing up, capitalism has proven itself to demand scarcity, to demand irrational, immoral, inhumane things of people. Right now, capitalism is demanding that you either go back to work and face the possibility of catching COVID-19 and possibly giving it to your family members, or you stay home and starve, and your whole family starves then too. So capitalism is not an ideal system unless you're one of the people who benefit from its scarcity. Capitalism is not a good system. It's an antiquated system, and it needs to change. At least it needs to be adapted in a manner that is more beneficial to the people. One of the things that the new systems it's not even a new system. It's just more of an adaptive system. Is socialism seems to be coming back, and people who are educating themselves to actual socialism are realizing that it's not the demon that our leaders try to say it is, especially not the new socialism. There is an old system of socialism that failed to produce results for the majority because of the way it was set up. In the old socialist system, what you had was you had a transfer of power from private citizens, which were corporately owned businesses and things like that, to the power went to bureaucrats. So you had a system of governance where the economic system was now in control of those who were in power in the government, as opposed to those who were previously in power as private citizens. And all that does is just takes it from one minority group of private citizens to another minority group of public servants who should be serving the public. But of course, you end up with cronyism, where they promote their own friends, and you end up with corruption, where they're trying to benefit themselves and their family. That's kind of part of human nature, where initially you do want to benefit your friends and family, but then that stuff gets out of control. So in the new socialism, it demands more democracy. And it demands more democracy where many people spend 1/3 of their day, at least 1/3 of the day, and that's in the workplace. Things like worker co-ops, where every person at the company has one vote, and there's no equality in the amount of money that people make. So it's not that everybody makes the same amount, whether you're CEO or whether you're just someone working on the floor of a factory. That's not what new socialism is about. You can make more money as in the company, but everybody gets a vote on who makes more money. You get to vote on the progress, and you get to review your boss's abilities and their capabilities, and whether or not they're taking the company in the right direction. So everybody in the company gets to decide these things. If the company is growing, then you're going to have people that are going to continue to vote for the same leadership to be in place. And then when it comes time for raises, all those raises are also voted on by the entire corporation as well. And if your CEO is doing the right thing by your company and your company is growing, then they make more money and you make more money. So in that case, all boats do rise, as opposed to what we have now, where CEOs are making 300 to 400 times more than the lowest person in the company. That is not an equitable or sustainable economy. It's proving itself to not be so. In the fact that now we have to reopen these states because our economy is going to collapse. And we have to get these people back to work because the economy is going to collapse. That's not a good situation to be in. So people look into New Socialism. A good resource is Professor Richard Wolff. He talks about the New Socialism. He talks about co-opting. And the other thing that cooperatives, other countries have done to promote cooperatives is to, and when you get laid off, I mean, maybe it's not ideal right now because of the situation we're in, but this is something that could have been implemented years ago because other companies have implemented. Just like right now with the coronavirus, America could be doing things that actually benefit the majority of the people, but they're not, whereas other countries are doing things that benefit the people, and their unemployment is staying low because of the things they've done. So with a workers' co-op, what other countries have done is when people were laid off, when they lost their job, what they could do is they could either continue to get their regular unemployment benefits, or they could choose to get it as a lump sum, all their unemployment benefits in a lump sum. But they were required to, one, get 10 people or 9 other people to join and say they would all agree to start this cooperative. So all 10 people would get the lump sum so that they have a bigger pool of money to start the business and a bigger group of people to start the business with. So you could do either get your unemployment compensation or you could start your own business. That produces, that gives people the opportunity to be their own bosses. Or they could just, like I said, get the unemployment benefits and just continue to look for work. It was your choice. Nobody wants to force anybody to start their own business. But if someone has an idea and they have other people that agree with their idea and they all come to a consensus, then why not give them the opportunity to do so? So that's one of the things that we, could shift towards. Another type of economy that we could move towards is called a resource-based economy. Look up the Venus Project. They talk about a resource-based economy, and it's more or less we already have the infrastructure to do a resource-based economy. And basically, instead of capitalism, which demands scarcity on the part of the majority and allows a minority to hoard most of the resources, in a resource-based economy, the resources are spread out wherever they're needed. So it's not that the resources are hoarded by one group of people and the other group of people get nothing. It's more like everybody gets what they need when they need it. And if they don't need a certain resource, it goes to a community or to a neighborhood or to a state where it is needed. It's kind of the way FEMA should be working, where they have emergencies, and if more resources are needed in one state, then another state will provide those resources, those emergency resources, to help that state out. So that's one economy that our leadership should be maybe not moving completely to, but at least considering using it, some of the aspects of these other economic systems. Another one is an open source economy. In an open source economy, you have things where people just do what they enjoy doing, and they produce things because they have a passion for producing those things. And of course, this is a more socialistic, or it's more in the lines of New Socialism. But we end up with people who are passionate about the things that they are doing. Well, some example of open source economy are open source softwares. And one example of software that's open source is called Open Office. And Open Office is just like the Microsoft Office. The only difference is that it's free at all times, for one. And secondly, it's open source because anybody can improve the software. Why is it that people like Nancy Pelosi, leaders like Nancy Pelosi, and even and all these leaders that we have, they and so many big issues that are boiling over in America, they seem to come to their senses after America, starts protesting and going to the streets. The problem with that is that Nancy Pelosi was there during Occupy Wall Street. She watched the police bash heads then. She watched them brutalize peaceful protesters. And even though Occupy Wall Street didn't have any specific demands, they did demand that there be a more equitable system of economy and the distribution of wealth be more equitable than what we had. So there were demands there, but they didn't really listen to these people. These people protested peacefully, and they were demonized by the media, and they were demonized by politicians, and they were demonized by public citizens. And then what happened? They were bashed over the head by the police. They were their encampments were torn down, and they were basically dispersed. And what happened to their grievances and the things that they tried to address with our leaders? They were ignored. All of them ignored them. Obama, Nancy Pelosi, everybody who was in Congress more or less ignored and forgot what Occupy Wall Street stood for. Same with Black Lives Matter. Obama was there when Black Lives Matter started, and he just basically stood around and let everything play out the way it played out in America. And usually that means brutality and violence from the police, and that's kind of what happened. Now we have a racist who's in charge of the White House, and or at least he's surrounded by racists, and they aren't going to do anything. Instead of something being done where the majority of people benefit from the actions of the leadership, that would have prevented Donald Trump from becoming president. He became president because people were fed up with all the incrementalism that our leaders seem to profess they're in favor of. We don't need small changes. We need big changes. We need leaders who can enact big changes. Look at the coronavirus. That demanded a big change, but they did nothing. They didn't even do incremental change. Well, yeah, they did. I'll take that back. They did give us $1,200, one-time payment of $1,200, which is useless when the next month's bills come. So they were able to give the super rich corporations, they were able to give them continuous supply of money. But the majority of people, they gave them a one-time payment. So now that the next thing is next month's bills are due, what are they going to have to do? They're going to have to go and fight. They're going to have to fight against Mitch McConnell, who's not willing to give anybody any money, even though he's a multi-millionaire. He's not willing to give his own people of Kentucky anything, let alone the people of this nation, let alone minorities, let alone anybody else who's been demonized by the media, by our leaders, by Donald Trump. They're not going to give anything. They're going to try to not give anything to anybody. And then, it's like, come on, law and order. Look at all the rampant thievery and theft going on with Wall Street. They are now, it has become legal. Their moral behavior has become legal to the point where they can literally steal everybody's money because they have more money. If you look at some of the things that have happened, the reason why Wall Street has been going on a bullish tear lately, it's because the Federal Reserve has been pumping money into Wall Street. Look at Hertz. Hertz declared bankruptcy, and you've got all these stupid people investing in a bankrupt company because they don't realize that they will be the debtors of last resort, meaning that stockholders will get their money after all those who owe debts to Hertz get their money first. So a stockholder might not get any money. They might get pennies on the dollar. They might get their full investment back, but that under bankruptcy law, that's very unlikely. So we have a populace that is uneducated, and so they go and they buy a bankrupt company because they don't realize that they're not getting their money back. They buy into a bankrupt company by buying stock shares of that company, because they don't realize that they're not going to get their money back, or they're more likely to not get their money back. And then you have you have instances in the stock market where you can get people that have a lot of money to manipulate and drive the price up. But once they start driving the price up and FOMO or greed takes over, the price continues to go up. But they sell before it drops, and once they start selling, everybody's fear kicks in, and they start withdrawing their money. But those people who bought at the top are screwed, and they end up selling at the bottom. Whereas those people who start manipulating money in the first place, they're already out. And if you don't believe that the markets are being manipulated, look at all the news and compare it to the direction that the market has been moving. The news has been bad, the markets move up. The news has been slightly good, the markets move up. With coronavirus, some company says, oh, we're testing a new vaccine, the markets go up. I think people are finally waking up to the disconnect that Wall Street exhibits when it comes to the economy. We have all this, all this unemployment going rampant around the country, yet Wall Street goes up. There's a reason for that, and it's because Wall Street only benefits a minority of this country is one of the reasons. I mean, there's a bunch of reasons, obviously, but one of the reasons is that Wall Street only benefits very few people. So they are disconnected from the rest of us. The economy encompasses everybody. If Wall Street encompassed everybody, then those companies that do poorly would go down or go out of business. Right now, we have so many businesses that are called zombie companies, and their value is indeterminable because no matter what happens, they continue to make money because the Federal Reserve, or they continue to be supported because the Federal Reserve keeps buying up junk stocks and junk bonds and just stuff that's worthless. So right now, the Federal Reserve is putting all this stuff on their balance sheet that has no value or has a negative value. So in America, we do not have leadership that provides, we do not have current leaders who are providing us with the proper direction that this country needs to go into. Think about it. Have they exhibited the leadership that we need in such dire situations? Have they reacted to coronavirus in thoughtful and proactive manner? No, they always seem to react, and their reaction half the time seem to be wrong. And then they mislead the people, whether intentional or not, by saying things like, oh yes, there is a vaccine that we're testing. And the people get excited and they go out in the streets, and then they don't provide things like the ability, a UBI, which is something that they should have been already instituting, because in America, jobs are being innovated out of existence. There was a few years ago when the number of jobs that were being created no longer exceeded the number of jobs that were being lost to technology. So when you have car companies that now make cars with robots, a lot of those people lose their jobs. There was a point where you could retrain those people and they could find jobs in other fields. But years ago, the number of jobs that were being created was less than the number of jobs that were being lost. So what we needed to start to shift over to was giving people a universal basic income so they could do the things that they were passionate about, so they could pursue careers that actually meant something to them, so they could innovate in their own field and move the society forward, whether it was through technology themselves or whether it was through the arts or whatever. Society needs to evolve and it needs to move forward, and everybody can have positive input in that, but not if you stifle the innovation of a nation and allowing only 1% of this nation to receive the majority of the wealth in this nation stifles the innovation, the artistic creation, the inspiration of a nation. Just like with politics, people have a choice between Donald Trump, who says and does terrible things and who's done terrible things in the past, and Joe Biden, who says and does terrible things, but people are willing to ignore it because the terrible things that Joe Biden says and does happen to be less than what they think Trump has done. In reality, if you think about it, however, Joe Biden authored the crime bill of 1996, and that has led to the incarceration of over 2 million people in this country. It has led to the incarceration of more black people than were enslaved in 1850. So who's actually done more harm, especially to communities of color? They blindly believe that Joe Biden is the better president. But first off, the administration he was in previously led to Donald Trump. Secondly, the bill he wrote and the things that he supported. You can look at his videos on the floor of the Senate when he was a senator, where he talks about how he doesn't care how these people ended up as thugs and all these other terrible things about the people of color. He doesn't care how they ended up that way, whether it was systemic racism that ended them that caused them to be in communities where opportunities were far and few between. He doesn't care. He just wants them behind bars. He says this himself. Those words come out of his own mouth. People need to wake up to this fact. Now, right now, of course, I think that Biden would be a better president than Donald Trump. But we should never have been put in a position where we have to choose between Donald Trump or the lesser of Donald Trump, the less evil Donald Trump. Because admittedly, both of those people are terrible leaders. And they will be terrible leaders. And they can only lead to more terrible leaders. So, I hate to tell you, America, but the choices that we've been given as far as the two parties, they're both bad, and they're not going to lead to anything good. Joe Biden will only he can only stop some of the crazy stuff that Donald Trump has done. But we'll see how much he does stop, because right now it looks like he's the favorite, because Donald Trump is just kind of going really off the rails. He's becoming too kind of crazy for even the people that would have voted for him. So anyway, that's what I have to say about leadership. There are characteristics that a leader needs. They need charisma. Maybe I should have just read an excerpt from my book, because I talk about the characteristics of a leader. And that's kind of relative to what's going on now. Because in my eyes, we have no real leadership in this country. Anyway, that's all I have to say today. So join me again for another Solutions. Enough complaining. Let's fix America. Thank you.